Hey guys, so today we have a 2020 election prediction between Senator Elizabeth Warren from the state of Massachusetts. She was just re-elected as senator in the state of Massachusetts. And of course, Mr. President Trump, who was from the state of New York but currently resides in Washington, D.C. So let's go back and go into the map options, make sure we're on safe and toss up so we can fill in the safe states. Nice. And easily. So Washington, Oregon, California, Hawaii, all safe for Elizabeth Warren. Illinois, I would now put into the safe column. Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, the District of Columbia, New York, Vermont, and that one electoral vote in the state of Maine. So we start off 183 electoral votes for Senator Elizabeth Warren. Now let's go and fill in the safe Trump states. So Alaska, Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, with the exception of that second district, Kansas, Oklahoma. I'll come back to Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, West Virginia. So this is kind of where we start off. 183 for Senator Elizabeth Warren, 125 for Mr. Trump. Now, with Texas, Elizabeth Warren is not the kind of candidate to win in Texas or come close to winning. I'm going to move that into the safe Republican column. That moves Trump all the way up to 163 electoral votes. So now let's go into the likely, leaning, and toss-up states. So we have the state of New Mexico. I'm moving that into the likely Democratic column. Again, Elizabeth Warren, not the best person to appeal to the minority and Latino voters, but I still think that she would win New Mexico by a comfortable margin. In the state of Georgia, I would also move that into the likely Republican column. I think Trump would win by more than 5%. Elizabeth Warren is not the candidate to appeal to African American voters in the state of Georgia. Another likely Republican state, I see Arizona actually being leaning Republican. Arizona a bit more Democratic than Georgia. I still don't see Elizabeth Warren really appealing to Latino voters, so that's why I'm moving that one over into Mr. Trump's column. That actually puts Mr. Trump ahead of Warren on the electoral count. So now let's go down to Nebraska's 2nd district, and I'm going to move this into the leaning Republican column. I could see a very good argument for it to be in the likely Republican column as well, but for now I'm going to move it into the leaning Republican column. Again, Warren, not really the kind of person to appeal to these kind of Midwestern voters, kind of the planned states, and I see only the real person who can actually do that is in fact Senator Bernie Sanders. So yeah, I see Elizabeth Warren losing that 2nd district in the state of Nebraska. So now let's go down to the state of Virginia. It's been trending very Democratic in recent years, and just for that reason alone, I'm putting it in the likely Democratic column. Same thing with the state of New Hampshire. I'm putting that in the leaning Democratic column just because Elizabeth Warren is in fact from the state below that, the state of Massachusetts. Democrats have won here before. No reason why they can't win here again. Now, going down to the state of Maine, I see that 2nd district likely to go over towards Elizabeth Warren. Again, she's from New England and she can definitely appeal to those voters quite well. But then in the 2nd district, I still see that one going for the president. And Elizabeth Warren, she does have an appeal with these kind of, what's the word for it, New England area. But I don't think it's enough to remove Mr. Trump from victory in the 2nd district of Maine. So we have 207 electoral votes for Elizabeth Warren, 192 electoral votes for Mr. Trump, 139 electoral votes still up for grabs. So I'm going to actually start off in the Rust Belt because I think that's a very important area. If Warren wants to win, the easiest path for her is to win in the Rust Belt. I think it's easier than winning in North Carolina/Florida. So let's start off in the state of Minnesota, and I'm moving that into the leaning Democratic column. There we go. And some people may say, no, this should be in the likely Democratic column, but I, I, I don't see Warren having that same kind of appeal. I know she is perceived to be like a working class hero, much more than Clinton was, but I still see this one being quite close. Mr. Trump still has a pretty big appeal in these states, so I'm putting that in the leaning Democratic column. State of Wisconsin, again, that's going to be very close. I see that one being very, very close. At the end of the day, I actually see Mr. Trump narrowly edging out a victory in the state of Wisconsin. Yes, they just elected a Democratic governor, but it was by less than what was expected in the polls. Also, Mr. Trump was able to win here in an upset back in 2016. I do kind of see that happening again in the state of Wisconsin. Going down to the state of Iowa, that's another leaning Republican state. I see this one leaning towards Mr. President. And I definitely see Iowa narrowly going to Mr. Trump. He was able to win here by a healthy margin back in 2016, and the Republicans just won a governorship, which is a statewide office, if you're not sure, in the state of Iowa. So, next up is the state of Ohio, and I see this one leaning towards the president. I see Ohio narrowly going towards Mr. Trump, and just because he was able to win here by such a decent margin, such a healthy margin back in 2016, and also Mr. Trump can, in the state of Ohio, he was able to win by a big margin. Republicans won the governorship. They weren't expected to do that. They won all the competitive House races in the state of Ohio. That was not really expected. And in addition to all that, Sherrod Brown, who's the Democratic senator from Ohio, yes, he did get reelected, but by a smaller margin than what the polls were suggesting. So next, let's go up to the state of Michigan. I see this one leaning towards Warren narrowly, but honestly, it would be too close, and it would be really close, too close for comfort for either of the campaigns. This will be a hotly contested state. I do see kind of progressive policies working a bit better in Michigan. Remember that Bernie Sanders was able to upset Clinton in the Michigan primaries. Warren is kind of more aligned with Sanders than she is with Clinton. I see that kind of carrying over a bit and delivering her a victory in the state of Michigan. Finally, state of Pennsylvania. I see this one being very tight. And when I say very tight, I mean like too close to call for either of the campaigns. So I see Pennsylvania again being very close. But at the end of the day, I'm going to narrowly give it over to Elizabeth Warren. She's from the area. She can appeal to these voters. And Clinton came so close in 2016 with a bad candidate. So I think that Warren could actually win in the state of Pennsylvania. So next we have the state of North Carolina. I see this again very close, but at the end of the day, I see that one going towards the President of the United States. And I see many of these races being unbelievably tight. And and that applies to North Carolina as well. I see it being very, very close. And I would say North Carolina, yeah, probably within 5%, I would say North Carolina would be within, and it's going to be a very hotly contested race. So next up, we have the state of Florida, and I see this one narrowly leaning towards the President of the United States. Republicans were able to win the governorship. They weren't expected to do that. They were able to win the Senate race. They weren't expected to do that. Both of these were by very, very close margins, but I still see this one leaning towards the president. Warren not really the kind of person to appeal to retired voters. So that officially puts President Trump over the mark at 270, and he officially becomes the next president of the United States. You can probably kind of expect where these two states will go. I see both of them leaning towards Miss Warren. That puts her at 268, a narrow loss. Oh, my reasoning for those two, again, trending Democratic, able to win with a bad candidate in 2016. I see Warren actually winning the states of Nevada and Colorado. So, final electoral map, 268 for Elizabeth Warren, 270 for Mr. Trump. That effectively re-elects him President of the United States. Thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.